Mariners hoping to get a win. Game 2 against the Red Sox. Let's talk first about what we saw in Game 1. Loved what I saw from Logan. Some question marks with the offense. Jason, tell us what you saw in Game 1.
Yeah, I think the big thing there was Logan Gilbert's stuff looked really good. Really, really good. Because I saw 2 of his rehab starts, and I wasn't impressed. It looked like he was laboring a little bit. But he got it done yesterday. We saw that splitter was good. Fastball had zip on it. I think he got up to 98. I think that's the important thing, because that injury that he had that set him back, that pushed him out of the rotation there for a while and forced him to miss time, is a pretty dangerous one. It's one that you worry about until he puts that in the rear view, months into the rear view. So it's good to see that the arm strength is there, that the stuff is there, because in rehab didn't really have that. So that was really good to see. I think that's the most important thing. I know they'll end up losing the game, on Monday, but 4 hits, that's certainly not good. But getting Gilbert back pretty much all the way to where he was, a year ago, or at least really close to it, is really important, because I think we know that they're going to go out and they're going to make moves at the deadline as long as they stay in this. But you're not going to completely fix a bad lineup. So they need that starting pitching to serve as the foundation of who they are and how they win games, no matter what they do at the trade deadline.
Church, how you feeling about the rotation now? I mean, coming in yesterday's game with Logan, I didn't expect 10 Ks. I'm like, man, this look good, get out healthy. Kirby having 14 his last start. We'll see Wu today. Are you starting to feel like they can get back to what they used to be?
I think the door is open for that, but they got to get Bryce Miller back, and they got to get him going. And there's some question marks about that as well. That's a different injury than Logan Gilbert was dealing with, and it's not as risky for Bryce Miller to try to pitch through that as it would have been Logan, because it's on the other side of the elbow. But at some point, if they just determine, hey, he's not going to be able to do this without having that, cutting that open and getting it removed, the sooner you do that, the better. That's an injury that in some cases you can be back in a couple of months. So, for example, if he had that procedure today, you'd think he'd be back in mid-August, or at least, certainly before the season is over. But if you just continue to try to do what they're doing, so there's a risk there. It's not an easy decision to make, and the medical people will advise them. But Bryce Miller is key to all this, because if it's not Bryce Miller, if it's not the 5 that you planned on, there's a lot of Emerson Hancock and a lot of Logan Evans, which is fine. They've done a pretty good job. But the advantage the Mariners had was on any given night, they had an advantage on the mound with the starting pitcher, and that's the biggest impact you can make. Their number 5 starter and their number 4 starter is better than just about everybody else's. And right now they don't really have that mix, partially because of injury and guys have been out, but partially because not everybody has looked right. Luis Castillo's just a little off still. He's been pretty good lately. We'll see. George Kirby's still trying to get back. He was brilliant 2 starts ago. Not so great last time out. We'll see what happens with Logan. Bryce Miller hasn't been right. Brian Wu has been the one that's been really good pretty much the entire season. So I think that I'm optimistic that door is open for them to kind of get back to where they were a year ago, 2 years ago, and be the foundation. But, Logan Gilbert is the key, to all of that, and getting him back and seeing what he did last night is certainly promising.
Let's say that hypothetically we do hear that Bryce Miller is going to undergo surgery, and now we're looking at, an August, kind of end of August return or what have you. Does that change your view of this team's priorities at the deadline?
I don't think so. I think I would look at this from a window standpoint, from a winning window standpoint. I have 2, 3, 4, 5 years with this core to win. So I need to build the team to win with this core. And so I would still think about Bryce Miller or anybody who might be on the IL at that point as part of next year's plan and part of the year after. So I'm not going out on the market right now and spending the assets. You don't want to throw your entire farm system into the trade deadline, right? So you want to minimize that as much as you can. If you need 2 hitters like this team does, because they need 2 hitters, I think we all know they need 2 hitters. They need a guy at third base and either someone in the outfield or someone at first base to kind of take over and be an everyday guy that's above board, that's consistent. They don't have to be stars, but you'd like to get some impact at 2 of those spots. To go out and do that and then go out and have to get a starting pitcher as well, I mean, I think you're okay with Hancock and Logan Evans, filling that 5 spot. Now, if you were going to be without 2 of your starters, you might decide, let's go out and get a veteran. Let's go out and get a mid-rotation veteran that can help us out the rest of this year. But I think if it's just one, I think you can deal with that and you spend your assets on that offense. And then I think they need at least one guy in the bullpen as well. So I'm a bat bullpen arm trade deadline guy right now for this club.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And speaking of the bullpen, like, what's the status on Matt Brash? Where do you think he is? Is there still more left for him to do? You think he's in a good place? Just say a report card on Brash.
Yeah, I think he's looked good. He reinvented himself a little bit there for a little while, but lately, going with more two-seamer, throwing that kick change and then throwing the curveball slider and doing a lot of east-west as well. But the last couple of times out, it's been a little bit more traditional Matt Brash throwing just a lot of breaking balls, and it's a really good one. So I think he's looked really good. That's the thing. When you come back from Tommy John, you just don't really know exactly, how guys are going to respond. I mean, he hasn't allowed a run yet, has he? Like, is that what we're looking at with Matt Brash, where he's been back since early May and still hasn't allowed a run? I mean, that's pretty crazy. He's giving up a couple of hard hits. The strikeouts seem to be there. I don't know that he's 100% quite yet, in terms of performance, but it seems like his arm is there because he's throwing awfully hard, getting the spin rates on those breaking balls. I love what he's done, that he's kind of added to his arsenal with being able to throw that changeup a little bit and throwing both fastballs, throwing a lot of two-seamers and going east-west on guys. I'm a big fan. I think if he becomes available to do a back-to-back, to kind of where he was before the injury, your bullpen's in a much better place. They're still going to need a guy down there to help out Andres Munoz, to help out Gabe Spire and Matt Brash on the back end, and I don't think they have that in their organization right now. But Matt Brash seems to be in a good place in terms of how he's performing. They are taking it easy with them, though. No back-to-backs, or when it is a back-to-back, it's one batter or two batters. But I think they can fight through that. I think they can get back to where he's just, good old Matt Brash, and you can just go to him whenever you need him. He looks really good.
Let's talk a little bit more about the trade deadline. Jason, I'm fascinated by just how difficult this is going to have to be. You can't really tell outside of a team like Colorado or maybe Baltimore who's going to be a seller. And then within those clubs, it's like, well, who do you want? Who fits your team? So and I agree with you, and I know Bump does too, where we're looking at like add a bat, ideally 2, and then add to that bullpen. When you're looking at the profile of the bats you want to add, with so few true sellers and so little talent, do you just look for like, hey, who's got the best guy? Or is there maybe a specific type of profile, a position that you think would really be a boost for this club?
I was always taught beggars can't be choosers.
That's kind of what I'm worried about.
I think you have your preferences. I do. I think you look at some of those teams that are going to, be available to talk. The Marlins, the Pirates, the Rockies, the White Sox. We'll see what happens with the Orioles. They've been a little better lately, but 11 games under 500, that situation doesn't look great right now. But did the Nationals get into that? They're 12 games under 500. They're obviously not going to win this year, but they're an interesting team because they're not that pure seller that we would think of, when we think of the Rockies or the White Sox, because they're coming out of their rebuild. They're like where the Mariners were in 2020 and like heading into 2021, where they don't want to sell off any of their good pieces really unless they're rentals, because they think they got a real good chance next year to compete. Whether the Rockies think that or not, or the Pirates or the Marlins think that or not, I would doubt it. Certainly the White Sox. And the A's, I think, are going to be interesting. They're in division, so that does make it a little bit tougher. There's usually a division tax when you make trades like that. But Jerry DiPoto has made deals with the A's before, and they have a player or two that might be able to help, Seattle, to some extent. So as far as profiling a hitter, again, beggars can't be choosers. I still love the idea of, hey, where are the Diamondbacks right now? They're 36 and 35, but they have to pass 4 teams to get into the wild card chase. What happens between now and the deadline? Because there's a couple of players on that Diamondbacks club that Seattle might want to, call them about, including Eugenio Suarez at third base. I think third base is a must get. I think right now we stare at the defense and the batting average of Ben Williamson, which looks fine, but the guy's getting on base about 28% of the time. That's a lot of outs at the bottom of your lineup. And while I like the player, he can't be your everyday guy at third base after the trade deadline. If that happens, it's a fail at the deadline. That has to be the priority.
Church, I think that when it comes to the trade deadline, the team might sell the public on Randy and Luke coming back as, okay, that's our big move, and then we're going to add a little bit here. And this season has been up and down, right? The offense has been banging, and then it's slowed down. The pitching has been suspect, then it's come back around. If they were to make that approach, if they were just to say, look, Robles and Luke are our guys, we'll add a little sprinkle there. Is that enough for this team to still be in the wild card race?
It probably is to be in the race, but if you're really truly looking to add to your club. I mean, do we really know when Victor Robles is going to be able to come back? It sounds like it's possibly September. So, if there's a risk that it's September, there's also the risk that there's a setback and he doesn't play the rest of the year. Yeah. Luke Raley's not an everyday guy. I think we know that. He's had some opportunities to hit left-handed pitching. He hasn't done it. I think you look at Luke Raley, kind of the way they're using Rowdy Tellez for the most part. Like when there's a lefty out there, he's not going to get a whole lot of the bats. So you need somebody to take those at-bats against left-handed pitching at the very least in right field when Luke Raley comes back. He looks pretty good so far down at Tacoma, but he's not a guy that's going to stand in there against, good lefties and produce for you, and you need somebody that's going to do that.
Leaning now on Future Star Series, I think that there is, and sometimes, Jason, full disclosure, I fall into this kind of like instant gratification pool of like trade anyone from the farm because I'm desperate to win now. As someone who's so glued into this farm system and not just that, but into the importance of those prospects and building sustainable clubs, how do you balance that? Like, are there, for instance, prospects you wouldn't touch? How easy or difficult do you think it'll be to trade prospects at the trade deadline?
To be honest with you, that's my one, complaint about the front office. I know they've been under ridiculous restrictions, last-second changes to plans heading into off seasons. Yeah. I've defended the front office a little bit. Not that they haven't made mistakes, but that's the one thing. I think there has been a little bit of, prospect hoarding because they didn't like the price. Well, sometimes to win at the major league level, it's got to hurt. It's got to hurt your farm system. You got to be like, dang, I didn't really. When they traded Noelvi Marte and Edwin Arroyo and they made those deals with the Reds for Castillo and Winker and Suarez, it hurt a little bit. But you got Luis Castillo, and he's been really good for you, and he was a big reason why you broke the drought a couple of years ago. So it's just going to hurt. I don't think they have an untouchable in the system. I know a lot of people love Feldine Celestin, a lot of people love Colt Emerson, and those are my top two prospects as well in the organization. But you have to think ahead, and you have to think, yes, it's going to hurt, but does it have to be, do we have to trade like a future potential star to get these players? When they made the deal for Randy Rosarina, for example, he didn't have a great early part of the season, but he really started to hit again and look like himself. And they gave up guys that were ranked in the system, somewhere between 8 and 15 to get him. I think there are more deals like that to make. Even for non-rentals, I think you can get away with staying away from your top players. But I'm not a big fan of this guy's untouchable because even if you have the best prospect in baseball, like when the Red Sox had Roman Anthony before they called him up, you're telling me that if the Mets call and said, hey, we'll give you Francisco Lindor, that you're going to say you can't have Roman Anthony? I mean, of course not, right? There's a price. There's a price for everything, and it just depends on what you can get. If someone calls Seattle and says, hey, we're willing to solve your right field problem, we're willing to solve your bullpen problem, and both of those players are controlled through next year, you're telling me that you're just going to put this label on Celestin and Emerson? Yeah, I got to know who those players are and what kind of impact they're going to bring, because if I get them for 2 pennant races, I might have to be in. I might have to pull the trigger. I might have to be bold. The whole point of the farm system is to help your team win, whether it's trade or get to the big leagues and solve a long-term problem. I'm not saying they're going to have to move one of those top 2-3 guys, but you have to be willing to have those conversations, or you're just not going to get anywhere in trades.
Good stuff from Jason Churchill at Prospect Insider on X. If you guys have more questions for Jason. Thanks, Jason.
Church.
Thanks. I'm going to go run around in the perfect weather.
Please do. Please do. Have fun.